Young Turks. Okay. Janky Granick Experian, if you couldn't tell. So news, you know how it goes. Good news, bad news. Usually more bad news, but that's okay. That's okay. You've got us. We're cheery / angry at times to deliver the news for you guys, and it'll all be okay. All right. Without further ado, is she the top newscaster in America right now?
People are saying it.
I guess.
Many people.
Well, I mean, I just said it, so by definition, people are saying it. It's on the streets.
Listen, I'm just in a good mood because it's Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay, I ain't got no job. No, I'm just kidding.
You have a lot of jobs.
I know, I have too many jobs. All right, well, you know what? Why don't we start off the show with a little bit of foreign policy news?
Let's do foreign policy.
Yes, story that I think is incredibly important, but will get no views because Americans don't care. But nonetheless, here are the details. Apparently, there was absolutely no negligence or misconduct when the United States launched a drone attack that wiped out 10 members of the same family in Kabul. This was the drone strike that followed a suicide bombing that happened near the Kabul airport as the United States was trying to evacuate Americans out of Afghanistan in the final days of the war. And there was an investigation done into the drone attack because there was some concern that the military, the Air Force specifically, acted too quickly with faulty information and innocent people died as a result. However, the review that was done by Air Force Lieutenant General Sami Saeed found there were breakdowns in communication and in the process of identifying and confirming the target of the bombing. But Saeed concluded that the mistaken strike happened despite prudent measures to prevent civilian deaths. By the way, in reviews of the video of that drone attack, there was indication that there was a child there, but the drone attack happened anyway. I'll get to that in just a minute, but first let me give you more details about what this investigation entailed and what they found. I also want to note they keep referring to this as an independent investigation, even though the individual doing the investigation is not only currently in the US military, he's also in the Air Force, but they argue that he's independent because he didn't have anything to do with operations related to Afghanistan. Okay, sure. So let me give you more. He says this: I found that given the information they had and the analysis that they did, I understand they reached the wrong conclusion, but was it reasonable to conclude what they concluded based on what they had? It's not, it was not unreasonable, it just turned out to be incorrect. Now, the United States believed that the car that they were targeting in this drone attack carried bombs that posed an imminent threat to US soldiers, which is why they carried out the drone attack. Although clearly now we learn that they didn't end up hurting anyone who's a threat to the United States, they just wiped out civilians. So the strike happened again after that suicide bombing near the Kabul airport. An Islamic State suicide bomber killed 13 US troops and 169 Afghans at the Kabul airport gate. But the American drone strike was incredibly devastating. Saeed was asked to investigate the August 29th drone strike on a white Toyota Corolla sedan, which killed Zemirai Ahmadi and 9 family members, including 7 children. Ahmadi, 37, was a longtime employee of an American humanitarian organization. And Cenk, I have more on this story, but I wanted to give you a chance to jump in.
Yeah, so there's a couple of really important parts of this. So first of all, he said it was an honest mistake. Okay, but guy, it's not even negligent, he said, not even negligent. So that leads to a couple of points. Number one is, but then by conclusion, you're saying that it was the right thing to do. Like that well, he's saying it was a mistake, but that no one acted negligently. So, but if you follow that logic, that means we should do it again. We should kill 9 innocent civilians, including one that works for an American group, and 7 kids, because they didn't do anything wrong. It was a mistake, but they didn't do anything wrong.
And we will do it again.
And
we've done it so many times.
And they'll cover it up, etc. So that's the message we send to the world. Oh, when we kill 7 of your kids, we conclude that we didn't do anything wrong. Okay, now the second part of it is the evidence that we shared with you guys in earlier episodes when we covered this story of why they thought it was an ISIS van. The evidence was terrible. They drove by the airport. Well, so did everybody else. It was a van. Well, there are other vans in Afghanistan. They were loading things onto the van. Yes, they load water, food. In this case, it was literally water that they were loading onto the van. I mean, the evidence they had was almost nothing. That's why they got it completely wrong. And it turned out to be one of our allies and their kids.
And not even a van, it was a white Toyota Corolla.
Yeah, and so thank you. And so none of it was right. Well, if that's not negligent, then what the hell is? And so if this is the standard, that means we can just kill any kids, any civilians, anywhere, and just go, honest mistake, whatever. Guys, do it again and again and again. But there's one killer quote in here that I'm gonna share with you later that just shows you how indifferent we are to other people's lives.
No, absolutely, because there was, in my opinion, based on the evidence that I was able to see, there's clear negligence. Because we're talking about carrying out a drone strike that could potentially kill innocent civilians. So you'd want to make sure that you double check, that you have the facts, and that the target is the right target, someone that actually is posing an imminent risk or threat to Americans and to people trying to evacuate, right? And also other innocent civilians. But that was not the case. A review of the video from that day showed that 2 minutes before the strike happened, there was evidence that a child was in the strike zone. And so the lieutenant general who was asked about this, the very person who did this so-called independent review, had, in my opinion, an incredibly callous response. So let's hear what he had to say.
The physical evidence of a child was apparent at about the 2-minute point. But I'm just telling you, I put eyes on myself. I just didn't have it. I mean, they're doing it for me, but I had to see it for myself. I'm just saying, it is 100% not obvious. You have to be, like, no kidding, looking for it. But when you're looking for it, certainly after the fact, if you ask me, was there evidence of a presence of, yes, there was.
So just to be clear, 2 minutes before the launch.
Yes.
2 minutes before the launch, you see a child in the strike zone in the video. But to be fair, you have to be looking for it. You have to be looking for it, right? Because before you carry out a drone strike that could get innocent people killed, you might want to take a look at whether or not there are innocent people in the strike zone, including children. But you'd have to be looking for it. No negligence, by the way, no negligence. Garbage, independent investigation.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, he said you have to be looking for it. Yeah, I would hope you'd be looking for kids before you launched a very, very deadly bomb. Are we not looking for kids?
No, we're not.
We're not. So that's, but guys, what he's saying is more damning than if we had said it was wrong and negligent, et cetera. Because he's saying, we're not even looking for kids. We're not looking for innocent civilians. We don't need, we had almost no evidence that it was the bad guys, and we did it anyway. So you don't need any evidence, and we don't care if there's civilians around, and we don't even look for kids. And that is not negligent. That is standard operating procedure for the Pentagon. So this is very damning. And if we had a real press in this country, the headlines would read, Pentagon admits we kill civilians with barely any regret or any care at all. And that's not how it's framed. They just, here's the Associated Press headline on it. Watchdog finds no misconduct in mistaken Afghan airstrike. Well, the Pentagon would have been embarrassed if they wrote that headline. Right. Because that makes it seem like the Pentagon is right, that there was no misconduct and it was an honest mistake. But when you read the actual quotes, the guy is totally indifferent to evidence or civilian life. And you saw it with your own eyes right there.
And what this does, I mean, obviously, when we talk about why certain people perceive the United States the way that they perceive it, you gotta understand, this is just one example. This is the kind of stuff that the US military carries out, not just in Afghanistan, not just in Middle Eastern countries, but now we're obviously hearing about drone strikes in other regions of the world where we haven't even declared war against the countries that we're doing drone strikes in. And it's frustrating because there's also the issue of bad actors abroad who actually do terrible things to their people. But when you hear about it from the Pentagon or the US military, are you gonna believe them? Because clearly, I mean, they cover up their own terrible behavior, their murderous behavior. And if this isn't negligent, I don't know what is. Then literally nothing qualifies as negligent. And the military can just do these drone strikes, refer to innocent civilians who have died as collateral damage, and move on. That's it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, last couple of things here. Apparently our intelligence services are miserable. And they had almost no evidence, and they said, who cares, kill them anyway. And so, how bad is our intelligence service? They're always telling us, oh no, we have the best #1 in everything. No, apparently we suck at this. And so we're killing civilians all the time because we're barely trying. And then guys, you have to consider that this strike was possibly political. Now I say that Biden's president, not Trump, it's not the Republicans, the Democrats are in charge. And I don't support the Republicans, and I voted for Biden. But I'm telling you, there was a world of pressure at the time that Biden had to respond because of the bombing that happened. The bombing that happened against us was awful. We all wanted justice and etc. But that doesn't mean that you do a political bombing just to be able to say get all the headlines about, oh, Biden strikes back, America strikes back. And then of course for days and days they denied that they killed civilians. Right. And then after enormous pressure, they finally had to admit, which they almost never do. But in this case, only because of the media pressure, did they say, oh yeah, obviously we were lying. They're all civilians, they're all kids, almost all kids. And now they come out and go, well, we didn't do wrong anything anyway. And it's just like a big F you to reporters who then dutifully go, oh, okay, F me.
Yeah.
This is the Pentagon's press release, and I'm just gonna print it for you guys because what do I get paid for? And finally, look, to the point about the press, of all the dumb things that's ever been said on cable, which is just millions of things, the worst thing probably ever said was Joe Scarborough on MSNBC of all places, saying that we get into all these conflicts in the Middle East with Muslims because Muslims, quote, hate us because they hate us, they hate us because they hate us, they hate us because they hate us. He said it 3 times. No, you moron of morons. They hate us because we murder their children without a care in the world and then say it wasn't even a problem. No one was at fault. It was perfectly honest and fine.
10 members of the same family gone, wiped out. And just at the same time, whenever it comes to manufacturing consent to get us involved in yet another war, you'll hear the Pentagon, you'll hear generals talk about the human rights abuses in other countries. Do we really genuinely care about human rights when we're willing to just wipe out an entire family and then pretend like we did absolutely nothing wrong? Come on.
And this adds insult to murder.
Absolutely. All right, so I want to take a break because yes, we are going to get into more of the back and forth regarding the reconciliation bill. Pramila Jayapal had a horrible interview with Anderson Cooper, so we've got some video to show you from there. And also, Joe Manchin was surrounded by climate activists, and he's in a Maserati and decided to do the wrong thing. So we've got that story and more when we come back.
All right, back on the social break. Here we go. Kara from Twitter, although ironically from our member section on TYT.com. Americans really suck at humanitarian acts, indeed. Mickey C. the Silver Dragon says, they investigated themselves and found themselves innocent, just like the cops and our insider trading legislators. It's a great point, as usual. I wish I said that during the video. You guys are awesome and super smart. Yeah, exactly like the senators. We have judged ourselves to be perfectly innocent. And what cops do 24/7. Maui Greg said the GOP and establishment Dems will use this intelligence failure to justify giving even more money to the military. Of course, you're like, oh, you made an honest mistake. Well, we got to give you another couple of $1 billion to figure that out, right? I mean, it's not going to go to you, it's going to go to Lockheed Martin. But still, you get the point. Jay Donaldson, I spent 20 years in the Army, deployed 4 times. During those deployments, they changed a weapon firing unintentionally from an accidental discharge to negligent discharge. When someone had a negligent discharge, they most likely lost rank and money. And that is without someone being killed or even hurt. So killing 10 gets you nothing for negligence nowadays. Yeah. And part of the reason, by the way, that they might have done the cover-up, well, number one, they're always going to do a cover-up. It's the Pentagon. I know our reporters suck at their job, so they tell you, oh, the Pentagon, you should assume what they're saying is true. No, you should assume what they're saying is a lie. And then you should, but they can prove themselves innocent, right? And they can actually present evidence, etc. But given their track record of enormous deceit, like decades of preposterous, ridiculous deceit, you can't call yourself a reporter if you take the Pentagon at face value, yet they all run around calling themselves reporters. Anyways, but guys, the other reason they might have not punished the lower rank folks, the people who actually did the drone strike for negligence, is because it was ordered from high above. And it was probably done for political reasons. So then if you say those guys were wrong and you punish them in the ways that you're outlining, well, they're gonna say, what the hell, you gave me the order, right? And so then they're gonna have more trouble. So then they cover it up. And the reason they can cover it up is because they know, oh, the mainstream media are crooks. They're gonna cover up for us. There's no real reporters in this country.
I mean, the story wasn't even really covered. I mean, I didn't see the story anywhere today, except the Associated Press, like just regurgitating what the investigation.
We killed Afghan children. No one in the elite circles in New York and DC care about Afghan children. They don't care about it at all. Go ask Joe Scarborough about it. He'd be like, what? What is it? I don't understand. I don't care. Peter Hamby said, you say, quote, I'm sorry, but cower behind more lies. Blood is on their hands. That's his haiku of the day. I'm out of time. I can't believe it was that short. All right, we'll be right back. TYT, Jank, Anna, you go.
All right, let's get to our next story.
Congresswoman Jayapal, you saw what happened last night. Do you take any blame in this?
Yes, that's the corporate media continuing its assault on progressives and basically placing the blame on left-wing lawmakers for Democrats losing pretty big in the elections this week. Now, as the head of the Progressive Caucus, Representative Pramila Jayapal, unfortunately, didn't do such a great job in responding to Anderson Cooper's line of questions. So why don't we get to the first clip so I can make my point.
The whole issue that we see from voters last night is people do need help from us, and that's what we've been working to do with the President's Build Back Better agenda. It is really transformational, and I think the cries for help in the midst of an economy that was handed in tatters to the president, that we have actually worked to fix since we've come into power in the House, the Senate, and the White House. We cut child poverty in half. We got shots in arms. We got money to small businesses. But obviously, Anderson, this was a 2-year pandemic that the Republican Party did not take seriously, and we're still climbing out of it. I mean, there's no doubt
you're saying
about
people
the fact that
you're saying people last night were saying that they need help. It doesn't seem like they're asking you, the progressive Democrats, for help. It seems like they're asking now Republicans for help, even though you say Republicans botched the vaccine rollout. I mean, Republicans did well last night.
So just putting Anderson Cooper's simple-mindedness aside for 1 second, we'll get to him. I want to comment on Pramila Jayapal because she's doing the same thing that corporate Democrats do, and it's not working, and they got to stop, okay? Placing the blame on the party that's not in power right now isn't gonna work. It looks like a cop-out. It looks like you're making excuses. It was a failure by the Democratic Party to actually pass legislation in time that would improve people's lives, right? They love to talk about the stimulus bill. She mentioned that Democrats managed to cut childhood poverty in half. She's referring to the child tax credit that was passed under the Biden coronavirus relief bill, but that was a one-year program that Democrats promised to make permanent, but it will not be permanent. If the reconciliation bill passes, it will be extended for 1 more year. So, wow. That is quite an accomplishment. Cutting childhood poverty, not completely, but in half for maybe, if we're lucky, an additional year. Awesome.
Yeah, so there's a number of huge problems here. First, I'll do the standard thing of, look, Pramila Jayapal is a nice person. Probably Anderson Cooper, I don't know him, but probably he's a nice person if you had a beer with him and stuff. But they've got big problems here. Number one on Jayapal, you've got to make your own case. And so I know she tried, but the problem here is that everybody on the Democratic side is too nice. So, well, we acknowledge our issues and if we pass these particular bills with this policy proposal, blah, 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 nobody heard anything, okay? So what the correct way to go about it is to say, well, look, Anderson, the reason we lost is because the Republicans lied about critical race theory and you guys didn't call them out on their lies. You should have said over and over again, there is no teaching of critical race theory in Virginia. The Republicans are liars, but you didn't do that, Anderson, did you? Okay, and if we made it clear that what happened in Virginia was the Republican Party en masse, every single one of them, decided to lie to the parents. They deceived the parents with their lies. Why didn't you call them out on that? So it's not my fault, Anderson, it's your fault for not doing your job. Now, of course, you don't know a single Democrat that would do that, right? Would that be effective? Of course it would, because Trump did it to brilliant effect, and he's an idiot, okay? And so, yes, making your case forcefully works. You have to drill it into people's heads. But the Democrats are too soft, too weak to do that. You need someone, that's why we keep looking for someone, a real leader. You know, Bernie, not exactly, won't fight against corporate Democrats. Jayapal, no way would fight against corporate Democrats or the press or any of these guys. Honestly, Bernie didn't fight against the press. So that's why I'm saying, bring Nina Turner back. I don't know, but this ain't it. You can't get your message out that way. You lost because you didn't get your message out. And so it's to the second point about the bills. Well, then you passed COVID relief bill, you got the checks to people, then did you brag about it? Oh, well, that seems impolite. I don't care about you and your stupid elitist friends.
Trump
okay?
put his signature on the stimulus checks.
Exactly, that's politics.
That's exactly.
And all the Democrats did was cry about it.
Yeah.
Joe Biden should have put a giant signature, bigger than Trump's. Half the check should have been Joe Biden. Okay.
No, but he's a decent person.
Oh no, you want to be civil. No, but look, I don't care if you put it on the check or not, but you need to be on TV. You need Democrats screaming on TV. We delivered for families. That check you got was us, us, us. Republicans try to stop it. Those sons of bitches try to take $1,200, $1,400 out of your pocket. They were trying to rob you, right? And you say they were trying to rob you 1,000 times until everybody in Virginia goes, well, I mean, the Democrats seem really mean, but I don't want to be robbed. I'm not going to vote for a Republican who's going to rob me. Maybe Youngkin is going to rob me. So just do better, but they're not capable of it. We're yelling at the wrong people. You just got to get new leadership. But it's not Jayapal. To be fair, I've never seen a Democrat on TV other than Nina Turner do it right. Literally, almost never, okay? And so now to Anderson Cooper, did you hear what he said? He said, it didn't look like they were looking to you progressive Democrats for answers. Which progressive Democrats? Terry McAuliffe is the most centrist establishment corporate Democrat, maybe literally in the history of this country. He would be maybe tied with Hillary Clinton, okay? And they're best friends. What do you mean, you progressive Democrats? Was there a progressive in the race? And Pramila, I know I'm yelling at the wrong person, but if you had a strong progressive there, what you would say is, wait, hold on, Anderson, check yourself. Your friend, Terry McAuliffe, corporatist that you love and support and said, you say every corporatist candidate would be brilliant and awesome and win the elections. And he didn't, he's nowhere near a progressive. So Anderson, please admit to the audience that you're not stating the truth here. There was no progressive in that race. State for the audience, I want it for the camera. I'm doing a fact check right now. Was Terry McAuliffe a progressive or not? No, he's a centrist. So can you please tell everybody the centrist, conservative, Democrat lost like they do every time? Go. No, but of course, no, media, oh, I want to be nice, I want to be polite, I want to be civil. Well, we're getting our ass handed to us because all the Democrats are too civil. And Anderson Cooper, do your job. Do your job.
But you know what? He is doing his job. That is his job. He is carrying out the exact messaging that he is supposed to carry out. Don't blame corporate Democrats and how incredibly unpopular they are, because instead of actually focusing on the issues that would be popular, they decide to get in the dirt and wrestle around with right-wingers based on whatever framing they want to use as the topics for an election. So in Virginia, it was critical race theory. And Terry McAuliffe, because he's a corporate Democrat and has nothing to offer economically, had no choice but to wrestle with that pig. And when he wrestled with that pig, he stated, I don't think parents should have a say in what the teachers teach in these schools.
They're so dumb.
Not a popular message. Congratulations. So he's a loser and he lost. That's the fact of the matter. But unfortunately, this interview continues to get worse, because Jayapal seems to think that what we experienced this week in states like Virginia and New Jersey are not in any way foreshadowing for the midterm elections. Let's watch.
This doesn't mean anything for the midterms. That's not to say we shouldn't take it seriously. We absolutely should.
You don't think this means anything for the midterms?
Well, I just think we have to take it seriously, but it shouldn't be projected to be a loss for the midterms. What we have to do is turn the ship by passing these two bills, and I think there's increased urgency to do just that. There is real unity in the Democratic caucus around passing both the Build Back Better Act and the infrastructure bill, and I hope to be able to do that this week.
So what do you think about that answer, Cenk? Because I just think if that's really what she thinks, then she, along with other progressives likely, are delusional, and they're learning all the wrong lessons from what happened this week.
Yeah, first, Anderson Cooper, that's a perfectly fair question. No problems there at all. He's challenging her, she's the one that's on air. Looks like the Democrats are gonna be in trouble in the midterms. Good, no problem at all. Now to Pramila Jayapal. Look, you are in trouble in the midterms, and it's not because progressives are holding up the bill. Manchin and Sinema are holding up the bill. So here, constructive critique, okay? So what would I have said? Well, I would have said, look, we have incredibly popular proposals like lowering drug prices. Anderson, do you know how many of your people in your audience want to lower drug prices? I do, there's a poll on it, 88%. 9 out of 10 Americans want lower drug prices, which makes sense, doesn't it, Anderson? It makes sense, right? And that's what I'm in favor of. Unfortunately, we have some corporate Democrats like Terry McAuliffe in our party, but also like Manchin and Sinema, who are blocking it. And you should ask them, CNN should ask them over and over again, why are you against a proposal that 9 out of 10 Americans want? Including Republicans, including independents. So I thought you said they were bipartisan. They don't look bipartisan. They look like they're against all the voters. Anderson, I'm desperately trying to help the American families. Progressives are the #1 fighters for American families and parents. We want to get them paid family leave, and we want to lower their drug prices. But corporatists like Manchin and Sinema, hiding under bipartisanship, are in fact taking money from their donors and working with Republicans to screw over the American people. Oh my God, but that would be outrageous. People would say she said naughty words and she said bad things about her colleagues. We can't have it. Instead, do drivel. I mean, did anybody get excited by what she said? Did anybody take it home like, oh, the Democrats got this? Oh, Democrats are fighting for me, I was wrong. No one thought that after that interview. No one, zero.
The consensus is that Democrats are in a lot of trouble for the midterms. And so if she really thinks that what happened in the elections this week are no indication of what is to come with the midterms, I'm worried about just her instincts overall. Now let's go to the next clip, because Jayapal did try to lean into what progressives represent, what they fight for, but Anderson Cooper wasn't buying it.
So I would just say to everybody, focus on the fact that we are going to pass 2 transformational bills that are going to change people's lives. And it's really important that we think about it as you know, how do people wake up in the morning and feel differently about their livelihoods and their opportunities? It's because they finally have childcare. They finally have free pay.
But what does it say that? What does it say that that you're going to pass? You know, you say you're going to pass these 2 transformational bills, and there's going to be a lot of things that a lot of people are going to like and really need. That very well may be true, but it still doesn't seem that it's going to make them like Democrats. Yeah, I mean, is there some sort of, I mean, maybe I'm completely overstating this, but I mean, you would think if people saw, oh, well, that's coming down the pike, and yes, it hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen, and gosh, that's a great thing, they would vote. It would have gone better for Democrats last night. It doesn't seem like it. Didn't seem like, in fact, it was kind of a resounding slap in the face to Democrats.
FDR was so popular that he was able to run for 3 terms as president of the United States. And it's because of the economic relief that he provided following the Great Depression. So Anderson Cooper is a moron if he thinks that a political party that actually materially benefits people's lives would not be a popular party. The problem is Democrats don't deliver. While progressives might want to deliver, they haven't fought aggressively enough to make it happen. They refuse, to Cenk's point, to call out the corporate Democrats in their party that stand in the way. But I also want to just note that, you know, she cited childcare and how Democrats are going to provide childcare. That's assuming that the reconciliation bill passes. And honestly, just my personal opinion, my personal feelings doesn't necessarily mean anything. At this point, I'm not even paying attention to the reconciliation bill, because my assumption is that it's not gonna pass. That's where we're at right now. That's how pathetic and feckless the Democratic Party really is. But in regard to childcare, remember, it was means tested to begin with. We're now learning that there's additional means testing that could disqualify some of the lowest income families in the country, because they don't take the time to think about the way they write the legislation, the way it might impact the most disadvantaged people in the country. That's who Democrats are. Let's do as much means testing as possible. Let's take right-wing GOP talking points to defend means testing, when in reality we should offer universal programs that would be far more popular, because everyone could take advantage of it regardless of where they are in the socioeconomic ladder.
Okay, now fair to Jayapal. She tried to go to the policies that are popular. I think she says it in a way that sounds like a politician, and so people tune out. But she was trying her best, so that's all we can ask of anybody. So that answer was fine. To Anderson Cooper's question, it's totally fine to ask, hey, listen, it looks like Republicans won, and they didn't want what the Democrats were offering. That's a fine question, but he framed it in a way where he said it doesn't look like people like Democrats. And so now you have a giant election in 2020. Biden gets more votes than any person in American history. The Democrats win overall. They win 2 seats in Georgia. That was just a couple of months ago. It's about a year ago. It's not that long, right? And so it seems like Americans like Democrats, fine. But the minute that the Republicans win one election, one governor's election, everybody on cable news, that said everybody hates Democrats. Everybody hates Democrats. Well, it's self-reinforcing.
No, I think everybody does hate Democrats.
Okay, well that's okay.
And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because I think that's an important conversation. And progressives are allowing this to happen. Americans are looking at states like California, for instance. They're looking at cities like San Francisco. They're seeing massive failure. And by the way, that failure is not due to progressive policy. That failure is due to neoliberal policy being carried out by our corporate Democratic politicians on a local level. And that results in what? Massive homeless encampments, just give them houses, give them homes, give them homes. No, they don't do that. Instead, they'll do situations, policies that set people up for failure. We're gonna release people from prisons and jails in the state if they've been convicted of nonviolent offenses. Awesome, I'm 100% in favor of that. What are Democrats doing to transition these people into homes, into a productive situation? They just let them out and let them fend for themselves. Okay, Democrats are failures. And when progressives don't fight for progressive policies to counter the neoliberal garbage, the rest of the country looks at, again, places like California and thinks, oh, Democratic policies fail. They're awful. We don't want it.
So you're doing an interesting, so those are all great points, but there's two things here that are critique of both Cooper and Jayapal in this case, and they're just representatives of the corporate media and Democrats in Congress overall. So one is that Anderson Cooper probably doesn't understand the difference between corporate Democrats and progressives at all. He understands that there's two different camps because he constantly blames progressives. He's the one that came out as soon as McAuliffe lost and said that Americans are worried that that Democrats are going too far left. But McAuliffe isn't left at all, at all. He's almost as right-wing a Democrat as you could possibly find. Anderson Cooper doesn't understand that because all he cares about is blame progressives, blame progressives, blame progressives. So if you said to him, Gavin Newsom isn't a progressive. He takes giant corporate donations and does whatever PG&E and Blue Cross and Chevron, et cetera, want him to do. He wouldn't even understand what you're saying because he doesn't understand politics. He'd be like, what do you mean? California, very liberal. Gavin Newsom won, so he must be a progressive. He says he's a progressive. I don't understand because he doesn't understand policy. He doesn't understand campaign donations. And because of that, he constantly misinforms his audience. And that leads to what you're saying, Anna. People think, oh, it must be progressives in California that are screwing up.
That's right.
When in reality, goddammit, it's corporate Democrats. And then that gets to, well, the bigger blame, if we're being honest, in this particular case goes to Jayapal.
Yes.
Because you have to distinguish yourself from corporate Democrats so they don't blame progressives for corporate Democrats' problems. When McAuliffe loses, we didn't lose as progressives, their candidate, the idiot, corrupt corporate candidate lost. When Gavin Newsom screws up in California, progressives didn't lose. Your corporate slicked back, guy who is, anyway, he's a Republican. Get real. But the media won't say it. It's worse. They stick us with their garbage. We didn't vote for these guys. We don't want these guys. And so Cooper doesn't understand anything. And then all of them on TV are saying, oh, well, no, the Republicans seem to represent the family. Why? What the hell are you talking about? They lied to the families. Will a single Democrat, God, they're so dumb. Will a single Democrat say on TV, can you believe how the Republicans lied to the families? The deceit that they did in Virginia, it's an offense to American families everywhere. They're just not good at this. And finally, of course, Jayapal would never do this. She should have used that opportunity again in that question to say, hey, Cooper, if we didn't have people like terrible Democrats like McAuliffe, Manchin, and Sinema, we would have already gotten paid family leave. Then everybody would be clear that we're for families because the Republicans, every single Republican said you have to go back to work as soon as you have a baby. Every Republican said you have to go back to work as soon as you have a baby. Say it 1,000 times until people go, what the hell, why are Republicans doing that? It turns out 70% of the country, 3/4 of the country wants it, but the son-bitch Republicans are blocking it. But they won't say it because that would offend the feelings of Manchin and Sinema.
Let me just close this out by saying that just got yet another example of what differentiates corporate Democrats from progressives. Progressives want tax increases on the rich. Corporate Democrats, since they're paid to lose and represent corporate interests, have decided in lieu of raising taxes on the rich to pay for the reconciliation bill, why don't we increase taxes on nicotine and e-cigarettes?
But that would go towards the middle class.
No, but this is who they are.
This
is who they are. So Biden's promise of refusing to raise taxes on those making less than $400 a year was a lie.
Lie. Why? And why did he lie? Because he's always going to protect his donors. For God's sake, Anderson Cooper, CNN, and all the rest of you, just understand politics and stop lying to the American people. The politicians do what they do because of the donors. If you don't understand that, you're an idiot. Retire from news, enjoy your Vanderbilt fortune, and move on with our lives and stop poisoning the American people with alternative facts. You're no better than Trump. You keep lying to them every day.
All right, when we come back, climate activists protest Joe Manchin, and he takes matters into his own hands. We've got that video and more when we return.
All right, back on TYT. Let's go to Super Chat first this time. Progressive Canuck just writes in, no cookies for any of them.
Exactly.
Fair enough. E. Arthur 779 says, the Democrats thinking being civil makes them look like responsible adults in the room as opposed to the rabid GOP. But yeah, it doesn't work. You're right, of course it doesn't work. But to them, it's more important to look good to their fellow elitists in the country club than it is to actually fight for you. It's just true. It's just true. Well, if Jayapal or honestly Bernie or any of them went on air and they were loud and they really hit Republicans super hard, more importantly, they hit corporate Democrats really hard. Well, everybody in Washington would be aghast because you hurt the feelings of someone who's an elite.
Oh my God.
What happened?
The FCC has ruled foreign donors can finance US referendum campaigns, opening the door to foreign spending on fights over high-profile policy issues.
This is just an auction. Our democracy is gone. Anybody can come in and buy our elections now. So the ballot measures, Saudi Arabia can pour literally $1 billion in. This is so stupid. Iran could buy the elections. China, Russia, it doesn't matter. Venezuela, it doesn't matter. I guess Democratic majority for Israel was too subtle. They're like, why don't we just let Israel come in and buy it? Or China, or Canada, or anyone else. So outrageous, it's absolutely outrageous. And will the press go nuts over that? No, you'll barely hear about it. Barely hear about it. The
story broke 2 days ago. One of our viewers sent it to me.
Oh my God, we didn't even hear about it. Jesus Christ, man, our press sucks. Oh yeah, well of course, corporate donations and foreign government donations and millions of dollars in bribes, they don't affect politicians at all. Said idiot, corrupt media members all over cable news. They're all corrupt. The cable is corrupt. They keep telling you their corporations don't rule these politicians and that millions of dollars in bribes don't matter. It's absurd. You should go wherever you can, email them, tweet at them, it doesn't matter. Tell them you're sick of their lies. Sick of their lies. Telling you that, oh no, Manchin's not affected by corporate donors. That's all anybody should be talking about. And by the way, the progressives are totally going to surrender. Here, I'll give you a very too honest answer to this question. Benjamin GL said, Cenk, please, as a founder of Just Democrats, please fly to DC and get a meeting with House progressives before it's too late to tell them that their base is turning on them. Guys, you think I didn't try? No, this is the super sad news. And I'll be honest with you, they won't listen. They're not listening. I'm not elite enough. If I was a CNN anchor, they would listen. So that's the reality. And if you don't like it, you should let them know, hey, you should respond to the progressive base instead of stupid cable. Hey, you know, guys, look, we're trying to build a change machine and do the process right and all that stuff. But in the meanwhile, this is the only thing we got for now. We'll talk about the Maserati because it's kind of related, but just tweet at all the media members, all the cable news anchors. They actually do check that, and it does hurt their feelings. Don't be like, don't yell at them. No threats, right? Just ask them, why don't you guys ever cover campaign contributions? What, are you corrupt? Are you corrupt? Because why won't you? It's weird. It's super weird that you will not cover campaign contributions.
Guys, I just tweeted a story from Axios about how the FCC has now allowed foreign money to pour into referendum campaigns. So if there's like a ballot initiative in your state, now the Federal Election Commission says that foreign money can pour into campaigns in regard to that ballot initiative, which is disastrous, absolutely disastrous. I want to know why no one's covering it. One of our viewers, thank you so much for sending it to me, sent it to me and I read it during the break. It is absolutely insane. That story needs more coverage.
Can you imagine at CNN, they get a viewer comment and they check into it and they're like, oh, it's true. And then they cover it because of the viewers, 0% chance. Could you imagine at CNN, somebody says, oh, it turns out now foreign governments can just buy ballot measures. They could spend $1 billion, just buy one, right? And everybody at CNN is like, who cares? Money in politics is awesome. It doesn't corrupt at all.
Jesus.
They're not reporters, they're actors. They're all news actors. They don't know anything about the news or politics. All right, go ahead, Anna.
All right, well, Joe Manchin is notorious for defeating the most important climate-related provisions in the budget reconciliation bill. So climate protesters have taken action and they have been showing up, protesting before Manchin's yacht in DC, and in this case, surrounding his Maserati to demand that Manchin change his mind. Well, let's watch what happens. So, I mean, I don't know if that's gonna do anything to change Joe Manchin's mind, because now I've learned about his Maserati, and it's the corrupt behavior that he engages in that affords him that Maserati and that yacht and the fabulous lifestyle that he has. And remember, he represents one of the poorest states in this country, West Virginia. And
probably the most important part of that is that that Maserati is paid for with coal money. He owns a coal company. TYT has reported that he's made over $5 million in the last 10 years from his coal company, and he still has at least $5 million worth of wealth tied into that coal company. So both the Maserati and the yacht that is so large is the size of a mansion. So it's a kind of a mansion yacht, if you will, all paid for with coal money. You probably saw that on CNN, right? Oh, you didn't? They didn't tell you that he owns a coal company and that's why he killed every fossil fuel provision in the bill? But you probably saw it on MSNBC because they're liberals, so they're on the left, right? Oh, you didn't see that on MSNBC either. Oh, that's really weird. Funny how they kept that information from you. Okay, now the most important part, guys. I don't like these kind of things where there's potential for physical danger, okay? In this case, the danger is to the protesters because they're in front of a car. And so, yes, Manchin did slowly move into them, and you could say you can get mad at Manchin for that, okay? But I need the politicians and the media to understand it doesn't matter what I say. I've been telling people don't go to people's houses because that's really dangerous. People have guns, etc. Don't do it. They're not listening to me.
Of course they're not. Because people are furious. And this is what happens when voters, when the people who are told over and over again that they live in this wonderful democracy are ignored. Just completely ignored and dismissed in favor of corporate interests, fossil fuel companies, and the like. And that's exactly what's happening. So look, this is something that really started to blow up under the Trump administration, where people would approach Trump administration officials or other Republican lawmakers as they were dining out. But it's gonna keep getting worse, regardless of what anyone here says, as long as this political system continues failing people.
100%, Anna, that's exactly right. And I didn't think they should have gone into the bathroom for consistent amount. On the other hand, streets, airports, etc., totally fine, right? And so, but it doesn't matter, guys. Like when I tell legislators in DC, because I know a bunch of them, right? Whether they're progressive, I also know some moderate and corporatist, etc., Democrats. And when I tell them things, they think I'm making it up. That it's my opinion, it's not your opinion. What they don't realize is, no, I'm the one trying to keep it political, right? And I'm trying to warn them of what is coming. But they're so blinded. They live in this very thick bubble in Washington, the Capitol, and they refuse to see what's coming. So, okay, don't heed our warnings. But then I'm telling you now, and okay, don't believe me, it doesn't matter. They're gonna surround your cars, they're gonna surround your houses, and they're gonna surround your mansions and your yachts. You know why? Because there is no avenue for them to express their opinion and be heard in a so-called democracy. You robbed them of that democracy and you said, I'm only gonna listen to the donors. Sinema literally wears a ring to tell her voters to F off, and they go and beg for checks right in front of our eyes. And they build giant yachts and drive Maseratis with the bribes that they took and the corruption that they engage in. And then they say, how dare you come near my Maserati or my yacht? You are uncivil. Uncivil or not, and whether we say it or not, they're coming. And so it's up to you guys how you react to it. No one can hold them back anymore because the frustration is overwhelming.
It's overwhelming because our democratic process is clearly not working either. Right?
It's not working at all.
It's not. So when you talk about how the response should be political, I hear what you're saying, and that would be the best response if we had political avenues to actually accomplish what we need to better everyone's future. And I don't like. Look, I'm just being real with you, right? And I think this is an important conversation. I literally don't know what the answer is because primarying corporate Democrats has thus far failed to yield the desired results, right?
So there's little things here and there, right? When AOC did the sit-in, we got a subcommittee. It was a start, right? And it was a hopeful start. And then they didn't do any more sit-ins until Cori Bush did it. And then when she did it at the steps, we got a reprieve for a couple of weeks on the housing issue.
Yeah,
right?
On the housing moratorium, yes.
So when progressives who were supposed to be our voice in Congress actually do their job and they fight aggressively but politically, it works. But when they don't do that, then hopelessness sets in.
Right.
Honestly, that's why I ran, because I didn't see it even in Bernie. I'm like, when are you guys gonna fight them? Because if you don't, we can't get our message out and we can't win. We can't create public pressure to win politically, And then when I didn't win, then I said, well, it's gotta be Nina Turner, it's gotta be Nina Turner. She's way better than I am. And she could actually fight so that we can actually do this in a political way. And what did they say? Cenk is uncivil. The LA Times wrote an editorial saying, we don't want lack of civility in Congress. We want everybody to walk around in goddamn yachts and mansions and Maseratis and not be bothered by the unwashed masses. That's what the LA Times basically said. And then Nina Turner runs and they go, oh, she's uncivil. No, we can't have Nina Turner. She would disagree with the corporatist. She does not agree to corporate rule. And so all the avenues were shut down. So now, when their houses are surrounded and their cars are surrounded, don't come crying to us. We told you and we warned you 1,000 times to do it the political way. And so good luck to you guys, good luck to you.
All right, well, let's move on to, I guess, lighter matters, and that's Milkgate. CNN has involved itself in a scandal that's being referred to as Milkgate by no one other than us. But nonetheless, let's talk about it. So, CNN is catching a lot of heat over its coverage on inflation. To be fair to CNN though, there's been a lot of alarmist coverage regarding inflation for months and months now. This all started with a tweet from a CNN anchor, and she writes about the Stotler family that they're spending a lot of money on milk because of inflation. A gallon of milk was just $1.99. Now it's $2.79. When you buy 12 gallons a week, times 4 weeks, that's a lot of money. Now 12 gallons a week sounds like a lot of milk, and a lot of people read that and were like, this does not apply to me. Who buys that much milk? But then you watch the video and you get a sense of what this story is about. They should have probably interviewed an ordinary family, but they decided to interview the Stotler family. Let's go to the first clip.
What does inflation mean for American families? This is the story of the Stotlers' weekly shop.
Good to see you guys.
Good to see you.
We have 2 biological kids, and then my wife and I have a big heart for adoption, so we adopted a sibling group of 2, then 3, then 1, and then we have a kid living with us right now who's kind of in a foster situation.
It feels like money isn't going as far as it used to.
They've got a lot of kids. No, look, I'm just saying, when you do have a lot of kids, even a little bit of inflation, especially when it comes to grocery products, hurts. And so I'm not trying to minimize that, right? This is more a commentary about CNN's coverage, because I feel like they went out of their way to find a family that has like 10 kids to really emphasize the issue of inflation. And by the way, they should have done a lot of fact checking in this segment because they got a lot of things wrong. We'll get to that in just a second, but Cenk, jump in.
The real facts on inflation are the important part here, but it is kind of amusing that they're like, on our count, it was 10 kids that he listed off, right? And he's like, well, look, man, we've got 48 kids and all of a sudden it's hard to afford things. I could probably figure out why, but I don't want you to misunderstand us. They seem like lovely people.
Yeah,
Look at all, they're just a great family, and they used to get by even with the 10 kids. And so inflation is real, but let's tell you the real reasons why.
Exactly, like the only point I'm making, I love this family, they're a lovely couple and they're doing wonderful things. I'm just saying this is not an ordinary family. This is a family it's a giant family. Okay?
That loves milk.
That loves milk, okay. Now let's get to the parts that absolutely need to be fact checked. So, they get into this issue of milk in a little more detail in the segment, right? So let's hear the prices that they used to pay and the prices that they're paying now.
All right, now we're moving on to dairy, which is right there. We started seeing everything going up. Grocery prices went up. Gallon of milk was $1.99. Now it's $2.79. Well, when you buy 12 gallons a week times 4 weeks, that's a lot of money. That's what I'm talking about. Thanks, brother.
Again, this is what they buy every week.
That's crazy. It's a lot of eggs. Okay, anyway, all right. So this is where I think the fact checking needed to come in, because I can tell you that milk has not been $1.99 a gallon for a long, long time, right? So I don't know where she got that number from, but the USDA does post prices, so you can kind of keep track of how much inflation has actually impacted the cost of milk. So let's take a look at this tweet, because I think this person, Dan Nguyen, did a great job in kind of illustrating what I'm trying to say here. Did Kroger regularly sell milk for $1.99 a gallon? According to USDA, the average in Dallas was $2.86 back in January, and now it's $3.22, a 15% increase. The nationwide average went from $3.57 to $3.60. So those numbers matter, because it's important to not spread this alarmist narrative about inflation, because people start to panic, right? And also it helps to do the GOP's bidding, because the GOP has really latched on to this issue of inflation as a political fight against Democrats. But Democrats, no one party is solely responsible for what's happening with inflation. We'll get to the reasons for inflation in just a second. But I do also want to just quickly note that later in the story, the family claimed that they went from spending $150 a week on groceries to about $310 a week on groceries. And that is a lot of, that's significant inflation, but that does not actually play out when you look at inflation in the data. Okay, so I want to just quickly give that to you.
So just real quick, guys. In media, there's narratives, and they talk about it. I've submitted op-eds, and they said that doesn't fit our narrative. I know, because I wrote it, you didn't write it. So what that tells you is there's a preset message they want to deliver. They want to deliver the message about inflation, and almost every narrative is driven by corporate interests. And so in this case, they want you to talk about inflation because they don't want you to pass those large Democratic bills that actually help the American voters and might raise their taxes. So that's why you're seeing corporate media talk about inflation nonstop. And does inflation actually exist in some places? Yes, it does. Okay, but if you notice there, I thought the most relevant stat by far is the nationwide average. So not randomly cherry picking one city or another. The nationwide average in that case went from 357 to 360. That's a 3-cent increase. That's a very, very, very small. You wouldn't even do a story about that. So you have to wonder why everybody is doing stories about this like it's a national crisis.
And I'm going to show you how the media's coverage on inflation, which is really heated up in recent weeks, has had an impact on the public's perception of inflation. But before I do that, I do want to just quickly note, inflation has hit the economy in very specific sectors. So it's not something that we're seeing across the economy, but we are seeing it when it comes to things like automobiles because of supply chain issues. We're also seeing it in groceries. For instance, grocery prices were 1.2% more expensive in September than in August, continuing an expensive trend. Over the past year, food is 4.6% more expensive. Again, this has to do with supply chain issues. It also has to do with labor shortages. It's all related to coronavirus and of course some of these labor strikes that have been taking place, and also the so-called Great Resignation, where people are starting to reprioritize their lives. They're trying to start new careers, and that's going to have an impact on the prices of some products. Now, with that said, though, according to what the family claims, the inflation that they're personally experiencing is somewhere between 55% to 100%. Obviously, that's inaccurate, and CNN should have fact-checked that instead of just giving the audience this perception that inflation is actually that high. Now, what about the public's perception of inflation? Because I think that's also super interesting. So Seth Ackerman and Jacobin wrote about Gallup's coverage of this. They've been polling Americans about their perception on inflation, and seems like for months, most Americans, despite the small amount of inflation they experienced, didn't really see it as a top concern. According to Gallup's most important problem page, the share of respondents who felt that high cost of living / inflation was the country's most important problem was as follows: only 1% in July, then 2% in August, and then it dipped again to 1% in September. However, remember how I said that they really started to heat up their coverage on inflation in the media? Well, it seems like that's had an impact. The share of Gallup respondents citing inflation as the country's most important problem in October has jumped to 5%. But that's still nothing compared to when we actually did have hyperinflation in this country in the 1970s. Inflation was the #1 concern of Americans for the whole of the year 1973, and then again in 1974, and again in 1975, and every year through 1981. Taking an average of all the Gallup polls over the course of that entire 9-year period, inflation was cited as the #1 concern of not 5%, but 44% of respondents. You know why? Because there was actually hyperinflation during that time.
100%. And guys, where's the inflation coming from? Yes, there's supply chain problems. That's a huge part of it. And so, but when you turn on the media, it makes it sound like, oh, the Democrats are in charge and they're passing so many bills. But wait a minute, they actually haven't passed the bills yet. They only passed one bill so far. That was COVID relief. And so wait, did you not want them to pass COVID relief? And is it even that bill that drove a small part of small inflation? No, the #1 thing that drove the inflation was the Fed printing so much money to give to corporations.
Yes, and banks.
And so the oversupply of money that the Fed printed in the beginning of the COVID crisis and just handed out to banks and giant corporations is what caused the inflation that you're seeing now. Now, that's a verifiable fact. You can check it with any economist, right? How often did you see that in mainstream media?
Barely.
I've seen it 0 times.
And look, the Federal Reserve under the leadership of Jerome Powell kept claiming that no, because they kept getting asked about whether they're going to taper their so-called quantitative easing. That's the monetary policy that they're doing where they just provide liquidity to banks and corporations. And they didn't want to taper it, right? Because when you do taper it, it hits the stock market specifically. And they're like, no, this is just transitory, it's transitory, it's transitory, it's transitory. The inflation is transitory when it comes to certain sectors, right? When it comes to sectors that were harmed by the supply chain issue or by the labor shortage, but The housing crisis, that is not transitory because it's that cheap money provided by the Federal Reserve that poured into housing in the form of investments from banks and private equity firms that artificially drove up the prices of these homes, essentially pricing middle-class families out of the market. And that's not transitory.
Yeah, and I want to be just more accurate with you guys. When I say I saw 0 times, it's not exactly right. I mean on cable news. In print, you will see it in some percentage of the articles in the 9th or 17th paragraph. This should really be the headline because that's what's driving whatever inflation actually exists. But it's buried in this news. They admit it. They say, oh yes, well also they printed trillions of dollars in money. And of course that leads to inflation. But on cable news, I've never seen them talk about that. Now imagine if they gave you the actual news and every day you turned on cable, CNN, MSNBC, et cetera, we're talking about the Fed should stop printing money. And why do they give trillions of dollars? Why do these bankers work for a living? Are they bums? Are they lazy? Why did they need all that extra money when they're the richest people on earth? How come you never hear that on cable news?
All right, that does it for our first hour, a fiery first hour at that. When we come back, Tim Pool apparently had COVID. What did he do to get better? We'll give you those details and more. Don't miss it.
Did he get better?
What's happening? I'm Rashad Richey, host of Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey right here on TYT. Let me tell you what we do on Indisputable. We go beyond the headline. We make sure that you know the full context of the story. And we also highlight issues that are important to the everyday person. We're talking about criminal justice reform. We're talking about the climate. We're talking about what's happening right in your local community. We also highlight very important issues that are affecting all of us, like the economy, jobs, and we engage in transparent debates with people who may not think like me. We're living in a current social atmosphere where opinions are represented as facts and lies are represented as truth. Make sure you tune in to Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey, Monday through Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time.
Hi, I'm John, and I'm new to TikTok, but about 3 years ago, I started my daily political news show, The Damage Report, because I noticed this trend where every morning I was waking up to this tsunami of news that was just generally dreadful and horrifying and shocking, and I thought that if I could spend my time helping people to navigate this, serving as a bit of a life raft, pointing out which news is important and why, there are worse ways to spend your day. We're not an average news show, and we don't want our TikTok presence to be average either, so feel free to let us know what you'd like us to do on the platform, and maybe give us a follow at The Damage Report.
All right, Amazon Prime members, here's how you can subscribe for free on Twitch. Start by linking your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, and then click that little subscribe or resubscribe button below the stream on Twitch. Scroll down and select the subscribe free with Prime button, and then you're finished. Close out immediately and share your little subscription alert with the chat. Send a cute message along with it, and bathe in the sweet, twitchy, Bezos-funded love. Hashtag Bezos Bucks.
Hey everyone, Matteo Scarapore here, author of Black Buck, which is Shop TYT's first fiction book ever. I'm honored. So, Black Buck is about a young man named Darren who's living in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. He lives with his mom, he has his girlfriend, he has his best friend, he has his neighborhood, and his neighborhood has him. Darren's also working at a Starbucks in Midtown Manhattan. And one day, this man, real suave and good looking, comes in and asks Darren to give him his regular. But for some reason, Darren says no. This man named Rhett Daniels, who's the CEO of a startup called Someone, located on the 36th floor of the same building, is impressed. And he invites Darren upstairs, and then he extends an offer to join his elite sales team. Darren reluctantly joins, and he soon realizes that he's not the only black salesperson there. He's the only black person in the entire company. So he goes through hell and back in order to make it to the top. And once there, he has status, money, power, but he says, you know what? I don't like being the token black guy. So he hatches a plan to help other people of color infiltrate America's tech startup sales teams. redefining what it means to be a minority in the workplace. This book definitely, if you couldn't tell, touches on many things that are relevant to this moment that we're all living in right now. But it's also connected to the many moments in history that have come before today. I hope that you read it. I hope that you enjoy it. And if you want to order a copy, go to shoptyt.com. Thank you, be well, and happy 2021.
Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Don't forget tomorrow, guys, the top of the show, 6 o'clock Eastern, Rogan. So we're gonna ask some tough questions about infrastructure and reconciliation bills. That should be a really, really interesting interview. And he's great for agreeing to come on. So don't miss that. And then tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern, Power Hour with Nina Turner. That's for our members, tyt.com/join. On YouTube, you just hit the join button below. I'm gonna ask her about her friend India Walton and what happened to her in Buffalo. We're gonna talk about Virginia and so many other topics. All right, Anna, what's next?
Tim Pool had disappeared from the platforms he does his show on, and people were wondering why. What happened to him? Is he okay? He usually doesn't take any time off. Well, now we know that he was diagnosed with coronavirus and was incredibly ill as a result. Now, of course, Tim Pool was not vaccinated. Clearly, he doesn't believe in vaccines.
How'd that work out?
And he's in his 30s. I mean, the conventional wisdom is if you're young and you're relatively healthy, COVID shouldn't be that big of a problem. But it was so much of a problem for him that he had difficulty breathing. So he talked about his experience in an Instagram video. Let's take a look.
This past week, I've been MIA because on Friday, I tested positive for COVID. I had an extremely bad case. My lungs were getting really bad. I think I would have ended up in the emergency room were it not for the prescription that I got, which is the kitchen sink treatment. Basically the same thing that Joe Rogan got. It was monoclonal antibodies, Ivermectin, azithromycin, and I also got NAD and a vitamin drip. And I believe those made me way better. I want to give a special thanks to Joe Rogan for just his support. I ended up finding a doctor. They gave me this prescription. I think it saved my life.
All right, so more on the prescription in just a moment, but it's worth getting into the details of what happened and what he was looking for when he needed treatment for coronavirus. Now, it's very likely that he wouldn't have needed any treatment if he had just gotten fully vaccinated. But in lieu of that, he decided to remain unprotected and got incredibly sick and then had to pay a lot of money out of pocket to get the treatment he needed to get better.
Yeah, look, he's okay, so I definitely don't shed a tear. If he'd passed away, it would be unfortunate, obviously, right? That's why we ask people to get the vaccine so they don't get really, really sick like he did. And before he thought it was no big deal. He thought the flu was worse. Come to find out, not true. COVID's way worse. And he was thinking of going to the emergency room because he couldn't breathe. Oops. All right, so this is when we get to say, we told you so. And so I like that he checked with the Dum Dum Network and he's like, Joe, you're a dummy like me, and neither one of us took the vaccine. We both got COVID, but my case is worse than yours.
Yeah.
And even though we're young and male and virile, like we've been telling all of our audience. And why am I saying this? A random person gets sick, I'm not gonna have sympathy? No, I'm a progressive, I'd have tremendous sympathy, right? But these are the clowns that are telling all of their audience, if you're a macho man, you don't need no stinking science or medicine, okay? Until, by the way, you get sick and then you're like, give me all the science, give me all the medicine, give it to me all. I need the whole cocktail. And by the way, they're all rich now. And they got rich by lying to their audience and pleasing the right wing. So if you're a macho, you don't need, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. Hey, Joe, Dum Dum, what did you do? Okay, then give it to me. Give me all the drugs, all the drugs. I love pharmaceutical companies. I love pharmaceutical companies. All of a sudden you do, huh? Interesting.
I thought monoclonal antibodies were created by activists who give it out for free.
Right-wing activists and fairy dust. Those are the things that happen and because they care about the people. No, it's the same drug companies that produce what? The vaccine.
Yeah.
Oops.
So let's get into these details because I think it's important. So let's start with graphic 2. With his symptoms quickly escalating, writes the Daily Beast, Poole contacted an urgent care clinic asking for advice. It was a terrible experience, he said of the facility. The issue of ivermectin did come up in his conversation with the clinic, Poole said. They told him the FDA hadn't approved it to treat COVID-19 and doctors would not prescribe it. And that was when Tim Poole decided to turn to his friend Joe Rogan. Now, how did that conversation go? Well, apparently Rogan encouraged him to get a second opinion and said to not ignore it and find a better doctor.
Find a better doctor who doesn't agree with any of the other doctors, and we'll give you a dewormer for no goddamn reason at all, even though it doesn't have anything to do with coronavirus. You got that? Oh, okay, good. I did the bat signal for the Dum Dum Network, and he gave me the Dum Dum advice, and I nearly died. But here I'm telling you, like as if this is a heroic story.
So what happened after that? Well, what's interesting is there was a brief moment where Tim Poole got a prescription for ivermectin, but really reconsidered taking it. So the unnamed private medical practice Poole contacted after speaking with Rogan prescribed a slew of treatments, including ivermectin, the Z-Pak, and monoclonal antibodies. Initially, Poole held off on taking ivermectin and the Z-Pak, but monoclonal antibodies seemed legit. He felt, given their effectiveness in treating former President Donald Trump. Poole pushed back, but in the end, he did choose to follow their recommendations. So what was interesting was he said that he reconsidered taking ivermectin because he was worried that people would accuse him of taking a horse dewormer. But if you're genuinely convinced that ivermectin is a real treatment for coronavirus, why would you be concerned about what anyone thinks, right? I mean, you
got to get better.
You've been slanging it on your show.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you're talking about it all the time. Second of all, he said he had trouble breathing. That's why he was thinking of going to the emergency room. If you really thought it worked, you're worried about optics at that point? You ain't worried about optics. No, you're lying. You know what actually happened? He called the doctors and doctors are like, you're a moron. It has absolutely nothing to do with coronavirus. You should stop listening to dum-dums and you should stop being a dum-dum. And then he's like, I'll take 1 out of 2, Alex, okay? I will take your advice for me because I wanna make sure I get better. But I'll continue to lie to my audience because it brings in the money to afford the actual medicines. And by the way, the monoclonal antibodies, they do seem to work.
They work, yes, they do work, and that's great news. Here's what isn't great news. Monoclonal antibodies, that treatment is not free. So for the Joe Rogans and the Tim Pools of the world, spending $3,000, $4,000 out of pocket for that treatment, no biggie. But it is a biggie for many of the people who watch their shows or listen to their shows and think, what, I don't need to get vaccinated, no big deal, right? I could just take ivermectin, or I could get incredibly sick, hospitalized, and then get hit with a monoclonal antibody treatment bill on top of the hospital bill that will likely bankrupt me. That's the problem. Right? Look, to be honest with you, I really don't care what happens to Rogan or Tim Poole. They can do whatever they want with their body. If they want to take ivermectin, do you, boo, but don't endorse it for your audience because these are not people who have your resources. So when they get incredibly sick, they're not gonna be able to shell out the kind of money that Tim Poole did. And now let me get to that because apparently Joe Rogan offered to pay for Tim Poole's treatment and he talked about that. He says, Joe, I have no words for the gratitude I feel. Apparently in the September of 2020 conversation, Poole told coworkers he had earned upwards of $600,000 the previous month, and the treatments cost approximately $3,650 in total, Poole said in his email. So he didn't need the financial help from Joe Rogan, but I would venture to say that many of the people who have faith in the Joe Rogans and the Tim Pools of the world and have faith in their medical advice would not have the funds necessary to pay for that treatment.
Okay, so are we against everything that isn't the vaccine? Of course not. We just do tell you what the doctors say, that's all. It's not complicated. So why would we randomly be against ivermectin but be in favor of monoclonal antibodies? It's not random, that's what the doctors say. That's why we're in favor of one and not the other. You know what else the doctors say? Take the vaccine, it's gonna save your life. Then you don't need any of that stuff. But guys, think about a really important part of this, okay? $3,650, do you have that kind of money? Now Tim Poole brags about how much money he makes, so he has it. Joe Rogan has it. But they tell their audience, don't take the vaccine. Oh, no, no, no. But when you're on the brink of death like Tim Pool and have trouble breathing, then fork out $3,650 to try to save your life. If you have it, if you don't, good luck to you. It doesn't matter, we're rich. We don't give a damn about you. But it's real macho not to take the vaccine. 99% of the world's doctors are wrong. It turns out they're right, it turns out they're right. Oh, here's more money that I have because I tricked my audience and played with their lives and risked their lives. I mean, and by the way, I don't know how they originally got ivermectin. It's like they picked that drug out of I wonder if somebody invested in it. Come to think of it, right?
We've talked about it, America's frontline doctors. I mean, there's actually a DOJ investigation into that group now because of what they've been doing.
Because they really could have picked it out of a hat. Metamucil is what you need. You don't need vaccine.
There are a lot of Americans who are irregular, so it wouldn't have helped with COVID, but other.
And then Rogan would be like, it's a human medicine. Metamucil's a human medicine. It's not just for horses. It's also not for coronavirus, but okay, do you, boo. And I'm with Anna. I believe in freedom, man. Just don't lie to your audience. But if at home you want to do stupid things, hey, man, that's your business, not mine.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we have some updates on both the Ahmaud Arbery case and also the Kyle Rittenhouse case. Those stories and more when we return.
All right, again, programming notes, Nina Turner, Power Hour coming up in about 40 minutes now, so stay right here and be a member to watch that. Rogan at the top of the show tomorrow, 6 o'clock Eastern, so that should be a really, really, really interesting interview about what the plan is for progressives. This is kind of an ironic note for you guys, but there's now not just super chat, but super thanks. So if you're watching our videos and you like one of the videos and you want to support that message, use super thanks on the videos. That makes a giant, giant difference. You guys know we ended the multicast of Damage Report on TYT. Make sure you're checking it out on the Damage Report. 1 p.m. Eastern every day, youtube.com/The Damage Report. Okay, and then we got Aspiration Thursdays. So Aspiration is an awesome bank, and so they're not technically a bank, but you can put your money there. I use the debit card everywhere. It's awesome. It plants trees, but there's so many things. We're doing Aspiration Thursdays, so hashtag Aspiration Thursdays, and what that means is at 4 o'clock on Thursdays, that's Pacific, you go to our Instagram page. And you will get stories and Facebook posts, etc., relating to the environment and ethical banking. And yes, that's an actual real thing. And an Aspiration moved their minimum wage up to, I think, $25. Now that's a minimum wage. That is very, very significant. So they actually live their values. So check that out and aspiration.com/TYT if you want to join up. Okay, and by the way, speaking of joining up, if you guys want to be part of us and do video content for us, go to tyt.com/careers. If you want to look for any job here, tyt.com/careers, check that out because we believe in you guys and you are us. Okay, now we go to members. I Am Sock says, I didn't get the vaccine, but I do spread monoclonal antibodies on my toast every morning. Okay. I Am Sock is consistently funny. I said it. Seriously. I said it. Okay. Kid tested, Politburo approved, writes in, waiting for conservatives to start throwing literal kitchen sinks at each other to cure illnesses. Oh, that's even funnier. Like, oh, get it out. They're like, oh, no, I heard from a guy online. No, it's not vaccine. It's not antibodies. You take an actual sick. Okay. God, that would be so funny. All right, tall glass of shut up juice writes in. Just got in from picking up my 15-year-old grandkid at school, listening to TYT. Of course, I told her if more people had the time to pay attention to the devastation of what is happening based on the greed and corrupt political system, they would be enraged. I'll be gone, but I worry about the mess left behind for your generation. She said, quote, my generation's plan is to clean up the messes the boomers have made. That is true, and unfortunately, they're gonna have to. Lisa Vibe says, I think you guys need ice cream in the main show. This is too much today.
I always need ice cream.
Well, I don't know that we need it, but I'm not gonna argue with you. All right, we'll be right back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, April Malone, and Literate Varmint. April and Literate Varmint just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. Does that make them American heroes? I guess. All right, Casper.
All right, so the men who shot and killed Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia as he was jogging are now standing trial for what they did, and we're getting some details about the jury basically picking the jury and who will serve as the jury in that case. Now, defense attorneys in the trial prosecuting the men who shot and killed Ahmaud Arbery are making a big deal out of the fact that there are some issues pertaining to the jury selection, right? The racial makeup of the jury. And here's what we know so far. Attorneys for Travis McMichael, Gregory McMichael, and William Bryan Jr. on Wednesday removed 11 of the 12 black panelists being considered for the jury, prompting prosecutors to ask Judge Timothy Walmsley to reseat 8 of them. Prosecutors argued the black panelists were removed from the jury pool simply because of their race. Now, to put this into some more context, I think it's important to hear from the prosecutor here. The prosecutor raised this issue to the judge, hoping that some of the black jurors could be put back into the pool. But unfortunately, she didn't get what she wanted. We'll get to the reasoning by the judge in just a second. But here is the prosecutor making her case.
The prima facie step for the state is to do the math. In this case, we had 48 jurors to select from. The defense was given 24 strikes. The state was given 12 strikes. And in this case, we had 12 African-American jurors. We had 36 white jurors. So African-American jurors made up 1/4 of the jury panel. But the actual jury that was selected has only 1 African-American male on it. It has 11 white people on it. They exercised 13 strikes against white jurors and 11 of the strikes against the African-American jurors, seating only 1 African-American juror on this panel. We ask the court to find that the state has made its prima facie showing of racial discrimination based on the math for this case.
Now, since this is a trial that has a pretty massive racial component involved, I mean, we're talking about 3 white men who were standing trial for the fatal shooting of a black man while he was jogging. It's important to have representation of African Americans in that jury. So this is an issue, but the judge, unfortunately, does not agree that the potential black jurors need to be reconsidered for the jury pool. He says that the court has found that there appears to be intentional discrimination on the panel, but that doesn't mean the court has the authority to reseat simply because we have this prima facie case.
Yeah, disastrous. So look, I wish we lived in a world and in a country where it didn't matter where people's races were, that they would just genuinely judge based on the facts. But we don't live in that country. History has shown us, and I don't mean history as an ancient history, I mean as in all of history, including now, experience has showed us that unfortunately far too many people have a perspective that is wedded only to their own experience and oftentimes hence their own race. So, and by the way, that's partly what happened with O.J. Simpson. And so it goes in a lot of different directions. So a largely black jury thought, oh, the cops planting evidence, that happens all the time. And so they thought it was normal. And O.J.'s case, he was incredibly rich. And so, and it was a high profile case, the cops planting evidence was less likely until you found out about the cops. Anyway, my point is, does that affect the jury? Definitely. Why do you think they struck 11 out of 12 African-American jurors? Because they thought, well, if African-Americans find out, these three guys get in their pickup truck, get a shotgun, and chase a perfectly innocent black guy jogging in the neighborhood, and then shoot him dead, they're not gonna like that. Whereas a white juror might think, oh, there was a black guy jogging by my house? Well, I mean, somebody's gotta do something about it, right? And so that's the sixth state of America, which then affects this particular case.
Yeah.
And guys, defendants have a giant advantage. And normally that's a good thing if you're a progressive because you want the state to be fair and the state has so much power. But in cases like this, what winds up happening is if you have one judge or one situation where the defendant gets an unnatural advantage and they get acquitted, it's over. If they get convicted, they can appeal again and again and again. But if they get acquitted, that's their ticket, get out of jail ticket, literally.
Yeah. I want to also give you a little more information about how this process works and what the judge's reasoning was in allowing this to happen. Because the defense attorneys can't just dismiss potential jurors because of their race, right? There are rules against that. However, there needs to be other stated reasons for why these individuals are being dismissed. So as the judge states in his reasoning, at least in the state of Georgia, the court, if it hears a legitimate, non-discriminatory, clear, and reasonably specific reason related to the case, that is usually enough to get the court to a finding in this third phase where the panelist doesn't need to be reseated. So what he's referring to there is, well, the defense attorneys gave other reasons for dismissing these potential jurors. And look, we don't know all the reasons, but some of the reasons cited, I think, are legitimate, right? If you're a defense attorney. So I want to give you those examples real quick. For instance, one panelist had a fiance who had expressed that she was a strong supporter of justice for Ahmaud Arbery on her Facebook page. And so they're worried that that's going to influence the juror, considering that's who his fiance is. Another black panelist told attorneys that her understanding of the case was that a young man got shot due to the color of his skin, and 3 white men who committed the act almost got away with it. So well, that's pretty. I mean,
yeah,
I think
look,
it's accurate.
I think, no. I think the way that we pick juries is absurd because that means you just heard about the case. Like that's what I think. But if I was on a jury, I would be open-minded. And if they showed self-defense, and turns out Ahmaud had a weapon on him, which he didn't. But if he did, and they showed in court, I would say, oh, okay, I didn't know that, so that's self-defense, right? But they assume jurors are really stupid. Oh, so if you ever heard anything in the news, that's it. You're totally biased forever and ever. So I don't really agree with that, but it is part of the system. But the thing is, guys, overall, were some of these legitimate and non-discriminatory? You can make the case. Were all of them legitimate and non-discriminatory? They just happened to eliminate 11 out of the 12 African Americans? Hell no, and you know it, everybody knows it. And that's by the way, this is now a lighter side of a very, very serious story. The only time I can impress my wife is when I use legal terms that are Latin. So I say prima facie case at home all the time, okay? Because it's like one of 2 things that I remember from law school. But what it means, and it's now randomly helpful here, is on its face you could tell X, Y, or Z, depending on how you're using it. In this case, on its face, you could tell they eliminated 11 out of 12 African Americans. That means you have a prima facie case that obviously was discriminatory. And the judge says, yeah, I hear you, and you're right about that, but still I'm not reseating them.
All right, we also have some bizarre updates from the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, so let's talk about that. The judge in the Kyle Rittenhouse case has dismissed a juror who joked about the fatal shooting of Jacob Blake. Now, the fatal shooting of Jacob Blake is what sparked the unrest in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where Kyle Rittenhouse showed up with a weapon and ended up shooting 3 individuals, killing 2 and wounding the 3rd. Now, that is what he's on trial for, in addition to obtaining a weapon that he had no right to obtain because he was underage. He was 17 at the time, and Wisconsin state law indicates that anyone of that age, under the age of 18, is not legally able to purchase and obtain a gun. Now, the judge in the case, Bruce Schroeder, talked with prosecutors and defense attorneys without the jury present to discuss the matter involving Juror 7's purported joke. Why did it take 7 shots? This was the joke allegedly. Why did it take 7 shots to shoot Jacob Blake? The juror allegedly said, according to Schroeder's retelling. Now, the lead prosecutor, Thomas Binger, then jumped in and said, it's my understanding that the rest of the joke was because they ran out of bullets. Okay. So before the juror was dismissed, the defense attorneys pleaded with the judge to at least question the juror, right? Just have a conversation with him and then make your decision. And the judge did that. And so the judge asked, are you comfortable repeating what the joke is, or do you want to leave it alone? And apparently the juror did not want to retell the joke. Juror 7 apparently answered he did not want to repeat the joke when called to answer for it. And then that, of course, led to the juror's dismissal. But the juror wasn't really happy about that, okay? Before I get to his reaction, the judge said this to the juror who was later dismissed. It is clear the appearance of bias is present, and it would seriously undermine the outcome of the case. That in itself would be sufficient cause for discharge. So he dismisses this juror, but then the juror gets super salty about it and essentially says, he was like very hush hush. And then once he's dismissed, he's like, I don't think my joke has anything to do with Kyle Rittenhouse. He didn't want to be dismissed, which
it has everything to do with Kyle Rittenhouse. Jacob Blake got shot, and then there was a protest that Kyle Rittenhouse showed up at with a weapon. And if you thought it was no big deal that Jacob Blake got shot, you would be very sympathetic, potentially, to Kyle Rittenhouse. Now, I just explained in a different story that I think the way we pick jurors is a little bit unreasonable. If you've ever heard of the story, they eliminate you, right? So, but given that standard, not only did he hear about the story, but he's joking around about how it's no big deal that Jacob Blake got shot. Well, that in our system, that is as biased as it gets. Of course you're gonna get dismissed. You'd almost say that if you were trying to get dismissed from the jury.
And then something else happened that this is where things get bizarre. I actually think that the judge made the right decision here. I'm happy he made that decision. We've been very critical of the judge in other contexts, so let's just leave it at that. But then something else happened that I thought was incredibly weird. I think the judge realizes that there's a lot of national attention on this case, and so he went on this long spiel about hearsay laws and decided to cite the Bible when explaining it. So let's watch that.
Carrying on a discussion that you or I might have, if it didn't require the strict rules that we have in the courts, perfectly, ordinary conversation. But when it gets into court, and this is actually referred to in the Bible, St. Paul, when he was put on trial, I think it's Caesarea. Well, it was over in Palestine, in Israel. He was accused of some activity, and he was a Roman citizen, which was not common, but he happened to have been a Roman citizen, and so he had rights that we share now as Americans. And when they tried to put him on trial with evidence which was being repeated by somebody who wasn't there and under oath, he said, "Where are the witnesses against me? I am a Roman and I have a right to confront my accusers."
The trial of St. Paul did not happen in Palestine or Israel. Neither one existed at the time. It was Judea. That's where it happened. But no, who cares? Well,
that's the least relevant. It's the general area. But he's trying to be Judge Judy because he knows everybody's watching, and he's responding to a media critique there. But just do your job, do the court. You don't have to do a long story about St. Paul, and you're not gonna get the job. That was the worst audition for Judge Judy I've ever seen.
He's very sensitive about the national media coverage of his handling of the trial. So earlier we shared a story about how he is not allowing the prosecutor to refer to the individuals who were shot by Rittenhouse as victims. However, he does allow the defense to refer to the people who had been shot, 2 of whom have been killed, as looters or rioters to garner favor with the jury. He made that very clear. So he got a lot of negative coverage for that, and he's a little hurt by it, right? So he says this: there are people in the media on reputable sites that are saying things that are totally bizarre. I don't think that what they're saying is bizarre. It seems like what he decided there is very much slanted in favor of the defense. The judge also criticized media accounts that referenced that he had been reversed in a murder trial that resulted in a life sentence. Schroeder said he was reversed in the 2008 case, followed the appellate court's instruction on the retrial, and then was vindicated when he was reversed again. I was right, he said.
Because he was double reversed. I'm not sure that proves you were right, but I get it. He's probably never had media attention like this, and if you've never been exposed to massive media attention, it is unnerving, right? But he's got to bring it down. He's explaining what hearsay is. Everybody knows what hearsay is. You don't need to get to a weird biblical statement to know hearsay is like one of the most fundamental things in law. We know why you can't admit hearsay. Move on, move on. So look, here, I thought in the beginning, he's either a massive right winger or a massive left winger. Why could he be a massive left winger? Because he wants to give the defense every advantage by saying you're not even allowed to call the victims victims. And now, but now it seems fairly clear that it's not fairly clear, but it looks like he's more inclined in the right wing direction. That's my guess, that's my speculation, to be fair. But the bottom line is, these judges have discretion in how they apply the rules, right? And so it is true that you don't want to bias the jury against the defendant. That's good. Even in a case like Kyle Rittenhouse, you don't make exceptions based on who the defendant is. You don't say, I don't like that guy, so we're gonna change the legal rules. No, of course you keep out hearsay, and you don't want the jury to be biased against them. But you don't have to apply it in a way where you say you can't call the victims victims, but they are victims, they're dead, right? And you can call them arsonists, looters, and rioters. Now you're biasing the jury in the opposite direction. So no matter what his political affiliation is and what my speculation about it is, that is a very bad ruling, and it gives Kyle Rittenhouse a massive advantage in this case. So on the other hand, he dismissed that juror, but that was such a layup. I mean, if he didn't dismiss that juror, that would be outrageous, right? And so he's got to try to be fair. I don't know if he has it in him.
All right, well, we're gonna take a break. When we come back, Tucker Carlson has decided to hit Donald Trump, which is bold. We'll see how that ends up.
No, that is a big drama, guys.
Yeah.
That's not a little thing. Tucker's coming after Trump. You got to see that when we come back. Back on TYT here. G Bogues just joined as well and is also an American hero. You could hit the join button below on YouTube. Do that. If you're on a cell phone, scroll down a little bit and you'll see it. All right, I'm gonna go to Twitch first. All these wonderful people. Chris Huggy gave 1,100 bits. Cole SD gifted 10 subs, so did Old School Hype. Shrifty gifted 2 subs, and so did Tahira Kathleen. You guys are all amazing. Now let me read some comments from members on Twitch. My own groupie wrote in, website member since 2015, remembering those Bezos bucks 2 months running. I love it, thank you for doing that. If you've got Amazon Prime, it's free for you, tyt.com/prime. You see in 30 seconds how you could do it, and renewing takes about 10 seconds each month, and it makes a big difference. 420 Kitty Dragon says, love my dragons and TYT family. The electrician says, much love, Jank and Anna. Tangram Unlimited says, TYT keeping real and on fire. If only we can get that fire in our Congress. By the way, FDR was so popular they won 3 terms, so popular in fact that the corporations on both sides of the aisle agreed on, or corporate, he wrote corpos on both sides of the aisle, agreed on laws to stop it from ever happening again. In fact, he won, of course, 4 elections, and he was intensely popular because he actually passed progressive legislation. Gee, I wonder if that'll work. Your corporate media will scream at you, no way, do not do what FDR did. People don't like that. That's why they elected him to be president only 4 times. Okay, Just Freaking Kreider writes in, 14 months on Twitch alone, nowhere I would rather be, even though everything is horrible. I still got you all I can count on. And then a heart emoji right back at you, Jess. And now let's go to Super Chat. Static Rich says, have you ever, and could you please soon have David Pakman on as a guest? Well, that's an interesting suggestion. David's a good guy, used to be part of our network. We do have him on from time to time, but we'll get him back on for you. KevZ247 says, sink water straight from the cast iron pipes have the bacteria needed to cure COVID. You say that a couple more times on the internet, and all the right wing will be doing it. Okay, they're like, oh, we threw the kitchen sink out, including the lead in there and the bottom. Okay, Jenks Rage Shamwow wrote in, why don't people like Joe and Tim tell their audience how much they paid for the kitchen's quote unquote kitchen sink? It would put in perspective for the normies. To be fair to Tim Pool, who is a bad guy, but nonetheless we're going to be fair to him. He did at some point say, yes, it cost $3,650, and that's devastating. We'll be right back. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna, and all of you wonderful folks, you are the Young Turks. Thank you for making this show possible. You did it, you, love you. Casper.
We did a little bit of it too.
We did some of it, that's true.
I'd like a little
that's
bit
true,
of
yeah, okay, Anna gets a tiny bit of credit, mainly Edwin and Bart, okay?
Well, I agree with that for sure, yeah. All right, well, let's talk about Tucker's tiff with Trump.
Trumps.
So, Tucker Carlson on his online show decided to go after Donald Trump. It was unexpected, but it was on the topic of the January 6th rioters. Now, let's hear what he had to say while his guest was blaming Trump for not doing enough to save those who wanted to defend his honor.
People are gonna be offended that I asked this, but I can't control myself. So like, what about the president on whose behalf they were gathered that day? Like, has anybody sent them money? I mean, has anybody really raised the people around him? Brad Parscale, all these people are getting rich, right?
Right.
Complaining that the last election was rigged, which it clearly was,
right.
Obviously.
Yes.
And they're making all this money, and all these people are sending all this money down to Florida. But is any of that money going to defend these people who went to this rally on behalf of that candidate?
So he wants to know. He wants to know, did Donald Trump step in? These people have gone out of their way to overturn this obviously rigged election. Now, as we know, the election was not rigged. There were multiple recounts. There has been no indication, no evidence whatsoever of widespread voter fraud. But of course, Tucker Carlson is just going to regurgitate and repeat that nonsense lie. And so he's talking to right-wing columnist Julie Kelly, by the way, and she's about to answer his question. before she does, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, so Anna emphasized that it's on his online show, and actually there's a reason why that makes a difference. And I hate to say this, but I say it almost every time because I need you to understand that it's purposeful in Tucker's case. Tucker is a smart guy. So when Louis Gohmert says something, he's a moron. He might not intend it, he just might actually believe it, right? Tucker doesn't believe any of this stuff, not 1%. He's just doing that to goose up his base, right? So the reason it's relevant that it's on his online show in this case is he's testing it out. He's dipping his toe in. If he did it on Fox News, where 3 million people would see it, he can get big blowback. He wants to do it on the online show and see, oh, how do people react? Okay, he's A/B testing it in a sense. And then he does all these clever things. He says Trump, he says Florida, but then he then says Brad Parscale got rich and a lot of people got rich. And then he deflects, like, I'm not doing a full attack on Trump. I'm just dipping my toe in to see how receptive you are because I'd like to be the new boss, right? And then if you notice, he said, I know people are gonna be upset, but I can't control myself. No, he planned the whole thing, including saying, I can't control myself, as if he's the honest truth teller who just, he didn't want to, but he had to tell you the truth, he's better than Trump.
Because he's really concerned about the well-being of the rioters, that's why, right? He's really looking out for them.
And he hangs out with those guys all the time. Oh no, he doesn't. He's an elitist and I would never hang out with those people under penalty of law.
Also, just a side note, Cenk, you could say that he's testing the message. You don't have to say A/B testing, it's okay.
Okay, well, I said it, and I'm not backing away from it.
All right, well, let's get to the answer that he got from this right-wing columnist, Julie Kelly.
It's a question that I've been asking myself, and I know a lot of them have been asking too. You know, we were there, and a lot of them were there to support Trump. They were there to support Trump.
Yeah.
They were there to protest the election being taken from him unlawfully. But aside really from a few comments about political prisoners, and he has said a few things about Ashley Babbitt, to my knowledge, and I'm pretty involved in what's happening with the defendants, especially the detainees, no, there has not been anything, any financial aid coming from anyone of a prominent position to help these people.
I just find that appalling.
I do
really
too.
do.
I do
really
too.
find that appalling.
I do too.
Come on, guys. I mean, look, he could afford acting lessons. That was so obviously fake.
But they'll buy it lock, stock, and barrel. Nobody watching the realizes it's fake.
I find it appalling. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Okay, whatever. He doesn't find it appalling.
Yeah, I'm gonna say a bunch of things.
It's a political move.
Yeah, I'm getting the vapors. I find it appalling. I really do. I really do. What is is this Mexican soap opera, a Turkish soap opera, a Korean soap opera? What is this? He almost should have looked away from her and spoken to the camera. You know how they do in the soap opera? I find it appalling.
And the camera pans into his face like a
that's
zoom.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, by the way though, Julie Kelly's actually right. So Trump is not supporting those people. They did go to support Trump and he has abandoned them and he is sitting on $100 million and putting it in his pocket like we always told you.
100%. And by the way, remember the Trump rally that happened right before the riots ended with Trump's claiming that he was gonna march over to the Capitol with them. But he turned around and went to the White House and chilled and just watched TV of everything that unfolded.
100%, because he's a coward. He's an unbelievable coward. Now Tucker wouldn't tell you that. He's got to just test it and see what your tolerance is. And by the way, he's partly doing that because he saw a couple of times audiences didn't agree with Trump. Remember when he got booed in Alabama when he said you should get the vaccine? So Tucker sees weakness there and he thinks, okay, this time.
I jump in it.
Exactly. He's like, time for the capo to move on up. And so. And if you notice, when she said, they were there to support Trump, and Tucker goes, yeah. So look, Tucker has made a correct analysis. Their side, not known for independent thinking. They're very easy to mislead the audience and the voters on the right-wing side. And he thinks, well, Trump brainwashed them into loving an authoritarian figure. Right-wingers generally like authoritarian figures and love to follow people they view to be strong, right? So why don't I just do 3-card Monty, and then at the end, oh, it's not in front of the cup that you thought it was, Trump, it's in front of me. You should pick me, I'm your authoritarian leader. And we've now shown you through a series of videos exactly how he's doing that. And it's It's amazing, actually, and I give him credit. And by the way, like that's the game that's being played here. But in this particular issue, who's right and who's wrong, we're still incredibly fair. And Tucker is correct on this, and Trump is wrong. Trump did take all the money. Those people did go to support him. He didn't give a damn about them, never helped them 1%. So Tucker picked a good topic because, and think about it, that's the last part of it. Tucker here, when he goes after Trump, he does it on his moral high ground. Because he's not going after Trump on something where he's agreeing with the liberal position, of course not, right? He's going after Trump where he is most vulnerable. Why did you leave your supporters behind? Hey, supporters of Trump, I'm on your side. I'm your actual defender, not Trump. It's a brilliant way of beginning to maneuver Trump out and take his spot.
Fantastic. All right, well, let's move on to our next story where we'll show you what's really happening in our public schools. So, a middle school teacher in Ventura, California, who also happens to be a QAnon believer, went on an insane rant against all sorts of things, including the vaccine, our whole democratic process. She thinks the elections are full of fraud and were stolen from Donald Trump. And she didn't do this in the teacher's lounge. She didn't do this when she was amongst friends and family. She did this in front of her classroom at Anacapa Middle School in Ventura, California. Now, we know about this because one of her students recorded her after the student went and talked to his mother about the rants that his teacher typically goes on. And the mother wanted to know, like wanted evidence of it. And so the teacher was eventually recorded. So we have part of that recording for you. Let's listen.
They're now saying that they don't want to give babies back to, like if you have a baby in the hospital, they don't want to give it back to you if you're not vaccinated. This is a complete power control threat. And people need to wake up and see that the government has way too much power right now. We're gonna need to talk about the election as well. Well, I'm telling them, hold on, I'm telling them, well, there were audits. This is information. There were audits, and the audits came back and saw that it was fraudulent. But so how is that an opinion? It's a court, like they proved it's not fraud. No, but have you read into the audits? Yeah, so the audits proved. So nothing's gonna get overturned, but the audits did prove. These days, a lot of people, they have different opinions. Yes, and there's a difference between opinions and facts. So you're saying that it's flawed? The election was just flawed. Is that the fact? I'm not saying the entire election, but the states where the audits were done, yes. And there is facts, there are statistics, and I can pull up those facts and statistics right now. These are not opinions, these are facts.
So that wasn't critical race theory. That wasn't, meant to teach children to hate the founding of this country. That was just full-blown insane propaganda. And apparently it happens so often that this middle schooler has told his parents that he's terrified of the vaccine, that he doesn't believe in it, and the parents are justifiably furious about it.
Yeah. I can't help but keep it real. All right, so it's an 8th grader, and the parents are saying he's distraught and he won't listen to his own parents. That 8th grader is pretty old. I'm surprised at that reaction, okay? Like you should be able to tell your kids, no, that's not true. Here, let's go out, look at it on Google, et cetera. It looks like I feel bad about it because I'm on their side generally, but it looks like they're setting up for a lawsuit. But we'll see how that goes.
Okay, let me also just note, he's 13, 14, he doesn't listen to his parents anyway.
Okay, well,
like
fair enough.
That's the whole point of being a teenager. But like,
so let's go to the heart of the
I'm not trying to excuse what the teacher is saying. Like the teacher should not be going on QAnon rants in front of her classroom.
Yeah, that's the heart of the story, obviously. So look, in Virginia, the Republicans pretended that they teach critical race theory in the schools. They don't. It was a lie all along. And they disrespected the parents, they lied to the parents over and over again. Democrats are incompetent, so they didn't do anything about it. In this case, here's a teacher who's actually indoctrinating the kids. Of course, Democrats don't say anything about it because they're incompetent as a party squared, incompetence squared, right? But is it bad? Yeah, no, and she keeps saying it's not an opinion, it's a fact, and that's your teacher telling you with authority
Exactly.
that that's the case. And she went on to have more lunatic conspiracy theories, which are even worse. And she should be fired. This is not even close. Oh, cancel culture. Now we can't lie to the kids in school anymore? Yeah, you can't. Your job is to teach them and teach them things that are true, not teach them things that are false. You're not doing your job.
Yeah.
That's the easiest firing decision of all time.
In fact, I mean, look, for all the parents who are panicking about comprehensive sex education, get a load of this. One of the things that she talked about was Hunter Biden, and she said Hunter Biden, for example, is doing deals with China and Ukraine and all these places where he was funneling money illegally. This is the part though. He also had child pornography on his laptop. He was having sexual intercourse with his own niece. What? What are you doing? What is that? Like I've got no love for Hunter Biden. I don't care about Hunter Biden. That is not something that you're supposed to be discussing in front of your middle school students.
Yeah, look, if you said he got a shady deal with the Ukrainian gas company, nobody cares, that's fine. And it's a history class and that's relatively true. And even if it was around the edges, nobody's gonna make a big deal out of it, right? But child porn on his laptop, even if that was true, why are you telling 13-year-olds that? It's so inappropriate.
Having sexual intercourse with his own niece?
It's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Guys, look, you can't teach things that aren't true. So if a math teacher with having nothing to do with politics was like, all right, now kids, remember, it's not an opinion, it's a fact, 2 + 2 = 5. You'd have to fire him too because it doesn't equal 5. He's not doing his job. And she went on even crazier QAnon type of rants. There's just no end to how wrong she was on every count. It's not a close case. She should be fired. Okay, now we got an incredible Power Hour with Nina Turner for you guys. What happened in Virginia, what happened in Buffalo with India Walton, hero of the week, villain of the week. You guys are gonna love it. Members get that show, tyt.com/join or hit the join button below on YouTube and you could become a member and watch it. For all those folks, we'll see you in a minute. You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like. tyt.com/join and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitzing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat. Animals are innocent. Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy.